Welcome along to episode number 20 of the Lifting in Life podcast. I'm Cam, I'm the host. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, I work in IT, and I'm also a personal trainer. Today, I'm lucky to be joined by Simone Brick. Simone is a trail runner based in Australia. She competes in a whole bunch of international races, including the Golden Trail series, which is a really good YouTube series too, and that's actually where I first saw her and saw what she does. So if you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend. It's very similar to something like F1 Drive to Survive. So if you're into that, you'll be into the Golden Trail series too. She is also fresh off the back of winning the Old Ghost, which is a 85 kilometre trail race down in the South Island here in New Zealand. In terms of this episode, we delve into a lot of interesting topics ranging from intrinsic motivation and where Simone derives her motivation from. Then we also get into the specific differences between trail running and road running, which is quite a big topic, so I found out. One thing I do want to give you a heads up on though is that we discuss Simone's journey with mental health and also with an eating disorder. So I just want to acknowledge that these topics can be quite close to home for a lot of us. As always, I hope you do enjoy the episode. If you want to show support, feel free to like and comment and subscribe on the platform that you're listening to this on. And yeah, enjoy. Should we kick this off?
Sure.
Here we are. Okay, Simone Brick, thanks so much for joining me today. I do appreciate you coming on. I can't say I've had a trail runner on the podcast before, and it's certainly not my forte either, so I'm going to take a learner's position probably throughout the episode as well.
That is A-OK. Thank you for having me. I'm privileged to rep the trail runners out there. Although I do my background is gym and lifting anyway, so...
Oh, is it? Oh,
yeah,
damn.
I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I was definitely a proper gym junkie before I was a runner, that's for sure.
Oh, wow. Learned something already and we're about 30 seconds in. That's awesome. Because for people who don't know you, I kind of want to build a bit of a picture around who you are, what you do. I personally found you on the Golden Trail series. I somehow stumbled upon it on YouTube. I think it's because I watched it.
Job.
It was sick. It really reminds me of F1 Drive to Survive. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's.
I definitely have.
I feel like the same directors made it. It's like Team Solomon, Team Nike.
Honestly, I know the people that make it, and like they're the ones that are doing all the filming and interviews with us, and they do a brilliant job. Good friends with them. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's how I stumbled upon you, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to reach out, and anyway, here we are. So for people to get a bit of an understanding as to who you are and what you do currently, could you just sort of give us a bit of insight as to what your day-to-day looks like and what your current situation looks like or entails?
Yeah, easy done. Well, my day-to-day is normally very different to my current day-to-day because I'm in a little bit of downtime because my body's letting me know it needs some rest. But yeah, day-to-day, my schedule for the last more years than I keep thinking, maybe 5 years, has just revolved around my running training, essentially. So I run typically a lot of kilometres, well, not all, actually, that's a lie. A lot on trail. That's where I love being. Trail, mountains, the steeper, the more technical, the better. It's definitely what I love. But I do definitely I have an awesome training group on the roads as well, for sure. But yeah, Monday to Sunday, honestly, everything revolves around the running training and trying to recover from the running in time to go again. But I do have a few things on the side where, yeah, as I said, I'm a strength and conditioning coach as well. I don't do many hours of that per week at the moment, but I do run coaching online. And just because, why not add an extra thing to the mix? I'm trying to finish off a Bachelor of Biomedicine.
Oh, wow. Why not?
on the side as well, because why not? So which keeps me sane at times when I have to rest. But yeah, I typically will have anywhere from 25 to 30 hour training week, and everything else fits in around that.
Man, there's a lot to unpack in there. You're spinning a lot of plates, that's for sure. And
Yeah.
could see how the prioritization would change given if you're on season or off season as well. And it sounds like the study plate might be spinning a little bit harder at the moment if you've got a bit of downtime on your hands.
Oh, for sure. I put in a solid 30-hour study week last week, so my brain got the workout my body's used to.
And in terms of your running specifically, I'd be pretty keen to understand how you first came across trail running specifically, and also what that period of getting into trail running was like, because you're not that, again, I know too much about it, but from my perspective at least, you're kind of at the top of the top. I mean, you won that 84k old ghost trail run down south a few weeks ago, and you're on the Golden Trail Series, which is a worldwide sort of event. So it's clear that throughout your journey, you've accelerated up through the ranks to the position you're at now. So what was the start of that sort of journey like, and how did you come across it?
Yeah, it's interesting you put it that way, because I suppose when you're in the journey, there's always higher. There's always more you want to do. But for sure, if I look back on my start in trail running, I would never have picked that I would be where I am now. That's for sure. Like, I would have thought people were crazy if they thought I could do what I'm currently doing, which is a really cool spot to be. But I hated running growing up. You could not pay me to run. I loved team sports. I was the basketball, football, proper football, soccer,
Football.
player that did tennis, did swimming, did softball. I did anything, but I definitely was not the runner on any of the teams. And running to me was typical. Running was punishment for missing a basket or missing a goal or whatever. So I didn't actually get my start in running. Like, I had a very short foray of a month or so when I was 18, but then didn't pick it back up again until I was 20, almost 21. And back then when I started running full stop, it was just a case of I saw other people that were doing this thing called a marathon, and I thought that sounded damn hard, and I wanted a challenge, a physical challenge, and then jumped right into what I look back on now as the stupidest marathon training you could ever do. But I tried, and I was making it up as I went along.
I was about to ask,
honestly,
how did you structure that training? Because that's a long distance.
I was reading magazine articles, but then just in my head I was studying nursing, thought I knew a lot about the human body, and decided to just experiment. So I definitely did some odd things, like I was studying nursing at the time, and say days I'd have like 3 lectures. I would do 3 track sessions in the day in my hour between lectures, where I would rock up to the track at uni, run 400 metres as fast as I could, look at the time, and then just keep trying to run 400 metres at that pace until I couldn't, and then go back to my next lecture. So no warm-up, no cool-down. Let's just go to the track and rip some 400-metre reps, not very fast.
And even from my perspective, that doesn't seem very applicable to running a 40k.
It's not great.
Marathon.
I also did the typical thing where I would jog throughout the week, essentially just as far as I felt like that day, and then do my long run, and my long run would be by far the fastest run I did for the whole week. So that's totally the way you do these things. And yeah, just my mileage was all over the shop. My idea of a session was not a session. I liked working hard, and I put the work in. I injured myself real bad. I went from running like 50Ks to 80Ks to 110Ks to 20Ks the week after that because I couldn't run. Like, it's just, I kept a track of my diary, and it's very funny to watch. Yeah. I ended up the last 3 weeks before the marathon, I spent more time on a rowing machine and an indoor bike than running. Because
sounds
I
like in
screwed everything.
You can at least laugh at it in hindsight. But
for sure. Element, I just had no idea what I was doing.
One element of that is I think is really cool is that the thing that drew you to running was the challenge. It wasn't necessarily, I don't know, motivated by something more superficial. To me, that seems like quite a deep kind of motivator, just to purely see how hard you can push yourself. Although your means of training might not have been optimal, the foundation of what you wanted to achieve is probably what still allowed you to be able to do it. I'm assuming that you ended
100%.
up doing it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was just trying to prove to myself and to the people around me that I could do it. And I'd been through, at that point, a fair amount of mental challenges that I was then just essentially, I think, trying to match with a physical challenge that made me feel capable. But I did it. I definitely did it. I, again, didn't run the marathon very smart because I'd never spoken really to another marathoner, another runner. I had no idea about pacing. In my mind, I was on a start line and I took off at a sprint and just kept going as fast as I could until the end, which actually did get me a decent time. Like, I did run a 3:19, which I look back on now and I'm quite impressed with myself.
That's very good, isn't it?
So I didn't do too. I won the race that I was in too.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, exactly. Even I look back and I'm like, that was rookie luck by far, because I just didn't know any other way. I was very willing to hurt, and I wouldn't recommend it, but I do still try and tap into that ability to just go, screw what's meant to be done. I'm going to just destroy myself and try and do this. To a lesser extent now. I'm not on a destruction path anymore. But it was a really cool lesson in going, well, if you absolutely have a crack and go all in, what can you do? And I surprised myself that day, for sure. But I am about as competitive as they come because I'm a second youngest of 7 children. So that comes with the territory as well. But to be fair, I wasn't even thinking about winning the race. All I was thinking about when I started running was, the challenge and wanting to prove to myself what I could do more than anyone else. So essentially, that was my drive to start and to do something for myself, by myself, putting in the work and not having any of the struggles I was having with being like, running to me was soulless in like, I could do it by myself. I could see the results. Like, it just has so much that comes with it that really helps level out life, I find.
It's an interesting topic that you're touching on there, because I felt like to me it sounded like a means of gaining some control over an element of your life that you could have control over when you train, and the autonomy of the outcome, I guess, was sort of in your hands in a way. Was that sort of an element of stability that it provided you at the time?
Yeah, I think it was very much a case of, at that point in time, I really needed some structure to my days, and running provided that structure in a big way, because I was very good at adapting my training for my mental space more than physical space on any given day. And I suppose my method going in was do what you can with where you're at every day. And it's kind of a case of take note of where you're at, and then what can you get done? Is that 2Ks? Is it 10Ks? Is it a long run? Is it whatever? And I just adapted as we went. So that was the one part of the training I reckon I got right, in that I wasn't tied to a specific plan in any way. But it provided just a focus for me, long off in the distance, that's something that I could slowly chip away at and work towards. And I did do I did build up to it. It was fairly quick. I think I signed up for the marathon maybe a year before the marathon, kind of thing. And I did a half along the way. So I didn't, it wasn't too mental. But at the same time, it was just a way of giving myself something to work towards that felt worthwhile, that was challenging and scary, and I wasn't sure I could do, but I was pretty determined to prove I could do. And I think in my head, the marathon was just the hardest thing that anyone could ever physically do. And I had no idea that trail and ultra and all that existed at all. And so it was just that drew me into running to begin with. And I pretty much just then repeated the entire process the next year, signed up for another marathon a year later, did exactly the same thing. And so my first 2 years in running were just very much my own thing, finding my own rhythm. I wasn't tied to a watch. I wasn't tied to a training program. I overdid it because I was very much going, well, I feel good today, so I'll do more today. And then if I felt good the next day, I'd do more again. And I'd do more again until I didn't feel good. So, like, probably should have had more of a plan. But
it's like
at the same
ultimate
time,
burnout strategy.
for sure. But at the same time, I was also, in many ways, listening to my body. Like, I learned early on the whole listening to my body thing. Because if I was feeling crap one day, I would back it off. And it was just, I was very good at adapting. I wouldn't care about my paces unless it was a long run. I've pretty much raced every long run, but that's just, fun. And then it wasn't until after my second marathon that I picked up a coach. And I definitely outdid myself on the second marathon, because even I look back at it and go, I don't know how. But it was really cool because you kind of just then, I think after my second marathon, I found myself in a mental spot of going, well, if I can do what I've done already, which I think, because my second marathon was a 3:07, but I look on now and it's like, it's not that fast. Yeah, it was 12-minute PB. I was pretty happy with it. But in the process of that 12-minute marathon PB, I think I ran a 10K, 15K and half marathon PB along the way. So I didn't pace it smart, but I had a lot of drive going through me at that point. So I struggle to tap into the same level of drive even now as I had back then, because it was like running I held on to very tightly at that point. And it's good to have that experience and know that when it counts you can do it, but also not have too much of a grip on needing to run long term.
Where do you think that sort of intrinsic motivation comes from? Obviously you're the one of 7 siblings and stuff, but do you think there was sort of more stoking that fire?
For sure there was. So my first marathon was born out of essentially needing something. The purpose, then the reason I needed structure was I'd spent a long time by that point where I had been in and out of different mental health institutions. I had already had been in a lot of treatment for my eating disorder, but that by and large I trained for it a good chunk from hospital. And so I had a lot of stuff going on in the background that I was trying to do the marathon in the healthiest way possible. I had a big treatment team around me, but at that point in time my world was very small. My world was my family, the very few friends that had stuck by me as I'd gone through a really rough period of 3 years or so. And then it was me trying to just find something I could do again that made me feel like, yep, I can do this life thing. Which it's not too healthy to, it's not ideal to have that attached to an outcome of a run. And I don't think I was necessarily too attached, because I learned to love the process of feeling stronger, getting better, feeling capable. I was very I wasn't around other good runners at the time. So to me, when I would go out for a 8K run and break my 8K PB on my normal midweek 8K run, I thought I was the best thing in the world. Like, I was just winning. So happy with myself. And I would enter a few tiny little community runs and a podium or win a pair of shoes or something. So I had a very different idea back then of what good running was. And in my head, any woman that could break 40 minutes for a 10K was next level. But at the same time, having achieved that first marathon, it was then that case of going, I had the drive to go, well, what else can I do? But also being so entrenched in the struggles of mental health and the mental health space, I actually used that the next year for my second marathon. I had to do that off very limited training because I'd had stomach surgery that year, and I did it as a massive fundraiser. Lo and behold, there's a lot of drive that comes from the fact that I spent the 6 months before that race fundraising for the Butterfly Foundation for Eating Disorders. And by the time I was standing on the start line, I'd raised $10,000. And so in my head, kind of all I'm thinking at that point is, you better damn well finish this thing now.
There's a lot of accountability
people
there.
that have given you $10,000 for doing the run.
Yeah.
So I was more invested in the fundraising than the run, but I had a lot of motivation coming from there. I know how I think because of my spending a lot of time in psych rooms, I knew how the mind worked, and I knew where motivation came from. So I had done things for that second marathon in particular where I know I went to pretty deep levels, but I knew how to get myself there, in that I had 42 names of other eating disorder sufferers written on my arms, so one for every kilometre. And so in my head, if there was a single kilometre where I was feeling horrible, I'd look at that person's name and go, you cannot slow down because it's for them. And then the next kilometre would be for another person. So I'd be like, you can't slow down. So I knew how to sort of tap into my brain. I'd learnt that through my studies, and I'd learnt that through all the work I'd been doing. And I definitely used that to my advantage on that day to get that run out of myself. And it's a cool tool to have. What I've learned since is that you don't want to use it too often because that is a surefire way to burn mental and physical resources out. But yeah, I had a lot of drive at that point, and my drive has remained and very much shifted throughout my time running since then, because this was like what years did I do this? 2015, 2016 were those two marathons. So it's been a while since them now, and it's definitely evolved and been reshaped for the better. And I know when I should and shouldn't tap into the real deep drive stuff now.
The deep stuff, yeah.
But it's been cool.
It's quite interesting, a lot of that fuel coming from that eating disorder and mental health kind of journey, because I've in the space that I'm in, sort of in the bodybuilding space, it's a theme that I've seen come through a few times, where what these kind of crazy sports offer you, that part of it is that you have this intense ability to stick to something. If you make your mind up on something, like I'm not going to eat any food, 100% you can just do it. And if you see that as the solution at the time, then you're not going to falter. And then it's as if you get this kind of ability to control this other area of your life that makes you so successful. It's kind of like the silver lining to going through a lot of hardship sometimes, is that a lot of that intrinsic drive is fostered in that space, although I'm sure it was super, super tough. The flip side to it is that you have this intense drive to be able to achieve big things.
100%. And I think one of the things I did take into even especially that first marathon is because I signed up for that marathon in a healthy spot. I was doing quite well. And this is where I actually definitely don't recommend this for everyone, because obviously having just come through eating disorder treatment and signing up for a marathon is actually a massive red flag. But I definitely did it in line with my doctors and treatment team, and I think the one thing I had with them was that I had to, throughout training and the marathon, I was not allowed to lose an ounce of weight. So I managed to actually maintain, if anything, put on a kilo throughout the time that I trained for the marathon. And your output would have been
so high too.
Yeah, and I worked so hard on that. Like, I had to show to my treatment team, my family and everyone that I was working just as hard on making sure I was fueling right as I was on the running training. So I had that in place before I even started. But one of the thoughts I did have that got me to shift my drive to something like running or the physical, and people can shift this anywhere. You can shift it into art, you can shift it into studies. It was just that thought that, hang on, I have spent the last... And at this point, when I did that first marathon, the main problem I was dealing with at the time was the eating disorder. There was many, many things since, but at that point in time, I just kind of looked at it, and because I had some rational ability back, when I have spent in the last 18 months at 12 hours of every day thinking about food, putting all my energy into what I can eat, what I can't eat, how I can maintain a very low intake that you shouldn't do. But when you just take the drive it takes to maintain an eating disorder and think about the hours, the dedication, and the motivation you've got there, if you can reshape that into something that's building you up instead of dragging you down and destroying yourself, just imagine everything you can do. Like, it's actually the thought processes and the drive and all of that comes, that people find themselves dedicating into an eating disorder. If that can be reshaped, I've seen people do incredible things, and you can do incredible things, because at the end of the day, what it takes to be successful in any area is kind of what it takes to be, like, I don't want to call it successful, but it's kind of what an eating disorder brings out in you, is that just this self-discipline, but determination and drive, and it's just all misplaced for a while there.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was a
agree with
really
that.
cool, it was a really cool, like, just reshaping of priorities, reshaping of where I was. I obviously had that drive there. I had the determination. I needed to put it somewhere, into something. And I found that for me, where it clicked and was healthy, and I was able to maintain it at a healthy level, and I was able to be rational about it and put it somewhere that I could feel and knew was building me up, and that was running for me. But I've seen people do incredible things in so many areas once you're able to harness what your brain can do, and instead of using it against yourself, use it for yourself.
Yeah, that you articulated that perfectly. And I think the really cool thing about that is that people who are going through a similar thing can see this side of them as actually being a positive trait within themselves, instead of a self-deprecating one where, oh, I'm doing this to my body, it's really bad for my body, why am I like this? Whereas it's like a trait of, well, I have this insane ability to intensely focus and be dedicated to something. What other avenue can I funnel this, ability through? And it sounds like that so far has been very successful for you in terms of the running avenue there.
Yeah, it certainly has. And there's definitely times I've had to have other people around me to help me put it in check on the running front too, because there is only so much running you can do, and that's where the other things that I do very much help keep me rounded, with the help coaching others and still studying. And I have a lot of things on the go, but it definitely is reshaping how you think of what your brain can do, and turning it from battling it to harnessing it and going, this is a strength and a power that I can use, and I can learn how to harness for myself. And that's been, I'm still learning. Everyone's still learning. You've got to, it's always
absolutely.
an ongoing process. So, but it's a very cool shift to make and then to learn from.
Yeah, and it would give you a more positive view of yourself too, instead of viewing yourself as someone with this negative thing that can't overcome it.
100%.
So I feel like...
And it's what I call like
there's
a negative cascade and a positive cascade. So it's almost like what I've realized over time is, and everyone can get stuck in these, you do one thing that fights yourself and is against what your values are, what you believe and what you know is good. And that one thing then makes you feel a little bit worse about yourself. And then you find yourself doing another to try and like make yourself feel better, but in a way that you know isn't good for yourself as well. And it's just this negative cascade you can get into, but you can also climb your way back out of it through every little thing you do that you know is the right thing to do for you in that moment at that time. It's building you up, it's healthy. It's just little bricks on bricks on bricks on bricks to then build yourself back out of where you've gotten yourself into. The hard part is that once you're deep enough in the hole, you will need help, and it's okay to accept that help in trying to find where those little bricks are of things you can do to build yourself back up. But 100% we all can get caught in positive cascades in life that really self-fulfilling in a way, that once you start taking steps towards your true self, what you value, what you love in life, what you want to do, and you feel like you're living life and making decisions that really are in tune with yourself, you'll find that it gets so much easier. It's a snowball effect forwards, but you can very much get caught in the snowball effect backwards just as easily if you're not careful and you don't have things set up around you to have help and external input and a community and people that you surround yourself by that help nurture the positive rather than the negative.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, I think coming out of that negative spiral, it's about aiming for the smallest little improvement instead of what I see
Tiny.
really common, say from a personal training perspective, is
Yeah.
people want to aim for perfection. I haven't gone to the gym for
Yeah.
10 years, but I need to be training 6 times a week.
Yeah.
Well, maybe
Yeah.
that could potentially be the ideal, but what is the smallest little brick, like you say, smallest little brick that you could add to this or to your structure or to your plan, whatever it is, to go
100%.
towards
And
that
it needs to
positive
be
cycle?
small. Yeah, it
Yeah,
needs to be small
yeah,
because you don't make a snowball, a massive snowman, like straight away. You make the little snowball and then you build up on the little stuff. And it needs to be, anytime I've tried to make a big change, it falls in a heap. You need to make tiny little changes that are just one step towards that big change. And that's the only way you can, what's the only way I've seen that you can get there and stay there rather than have
yeah,
that flash in the pan, like get there and maybe hold it for a tiny little bit, but then crash and burn, right straight back to where you were.
yeah,
And one analogy I really like for this is you're climbing a ladder and you have to visit every single rung on the ladder. Any that you skip, you try and skip. If you skip 5 rungs up, you eventually will have to go back and revisit. And life will force you into it, or you force yourself to take it slow. Either way, you're going to visit every single little rung along the way. And so if you start from the bottom and you slowly work your way up, you'll just keep climbing. But if you skip 5, you'll eventually drop back 4. And then if you skip 6, you'll drop back 5. Like, it's just, life has its way of doing that, and goodness knows why it happens, but it happens to everyone.
I rate that. That's really cool. I'd rate that. I'm probably going to use that again in the future.
Good one. You can imagine it happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose my mind straight away goes to the physical training aspect, but that would apply to so many different facets of your life. If you were
everything.
to, I don't know, start a business, get a job, like anything, there's all of these different aspects that if you skip over crucial steps in the process, then you're going to have a hole in your learnings or in your ability that you're eventually going to have to retrospectively fill instead of actually doing it at the time. And then another thing I thought of in terms of the making small improvements, if we were to use, I don't know, running as an analogy, like, I want to do a marathon, but I haven't gone for a run in 5 years. If I see myself run 500 meters successfully, and that was the goal that I set out, then, okay, cool. I see myself achieve something that I set for myself. That means I can have trust in myself versus if I go, I'm going to run 10 Ks up and down some hills and I blow out after 800 meters, then, oh, well, I don't have an ability to stick to the things that I've set for myself. I rate that. That's really cool.
For sure.
Right.
Take the tiny wins. Tiny wins are the big wins in the long term.
Yep. Precisely. Now, if we were to pull it back a little bit, so you did your 2 marathons, and then
we didn't even get to the trail.
That's all right. This is what it's all about. So you did your 2 marathons. You obviously at some point thought, man, I could really do this, could take it a bit more seriously. What was that process like in terms of engaging with a coach and sort of laying out a plan of attack from there?
So it was in the lead up to the second marathon. I did reach out to a local running coach. He has more of a junior squad, and he wasn't necessarily marathon coach, but he did know definitely a lot about running. Stephen Hoare, and after the marathon, and he could see he saw a bit of the training I was doing, and he tried to help out where he could. I'm not sure how coachable I was at that point, but he put me in touch after running the marathon with Tim, who has been my coach ever since. So Tim Crosby. And to be honest, he took little old me and reshaped everything I was doing. So I went to him going, yep, I've run a marathon. I want to do the marathon faster. And I started to learn about longer distance stuff. And one of the other runners that Tim coaches, Kirsten Bull, she had just that year run the 100K record for Oz, I think. And I looked at that and I went, yep, that's me. I want to do that. Like, let's have a crack at that. Because in my head, I had now seen quite a few other runners, and I'd seen how fast they could go. And I was just like, I can't do that. I'm not a speed demon. Like, I can't do fast stuff, but I know I can keep going because to me, that's more mental. And so I went to him going, yep, just train me to run really long ways. And he turned around and went, nope, you need to learn how to run, you're going to run like 3Ks on the track and a 5K and a 10K first. And so
that's a good sign. That's a sign of a good coach.
100% it was. 100% it was.
Yep.
And I think I just straight away was drawn to Tim in the way that he's straight to the point as well. I think the first session I ever rocked up to for Crosby Crew, I knew from watching other runners and from feeling the way I was running that I wasn't strong. I could feel my legs weren't moving the way that most people's were. My upper body was all over the shop. I knew my form wasn't good. And I'm the sort of person that if something's not right, I want to fix it, but I didn't know how to fix things. Mm-hmm. And I went to the first Crosby Crew session, did some 400-meter reps, and I remember getting to the end of the session and Tim turning around to me and going, "That was ugly, but you got it done. Like, well done on doing it, but that was damn ugly." And I went, "Sweet.
Straight up.
Okay, now help me. Like, help me fix that, because I know it was ugly. Like, I can feel that it was ugly." And yeah, I was not a pretty runner. I was a grit your teeth and grind through it kind of person. So yeah, I was drawn to that fact that I knew he wasn't going to beat around the bush. He was going to tell me like it was. I was going to get honest feedback. And then it was over the next very long period that I slowly got more guidance from him, and he was just writing programs. And it was slowly over time that I very much came around to his way of coaching, and I'm very much now sold on. I even have people come to me now that just want to go longer and longer, and I'm just like, but learn to run short and fast, and you enjoy the long a lot better because you're so much stronger and more efficient and capable. Exactly. And so I just found myself under his guidance to begin with. I wasn't sold straight away, but I was willing to give anything a try. I will take guidance. I will take coaching. And I was like, if you give me a program, I will follow it to the T, like to the meter. Yeah. So, it was a case that I was then getting to races and not wanting, it wasn't just me anymore. I didn't want to let him down, and I wanted to show up him and other people around me that I could do things that they thought I should be able to do. And it resulted in me running a lot faster than I ever thought I could run over a 3K, over a 5K, over a steeplechase. The day I broke 40 minutes for a 10K, I was just like, my mind was blown, because in my head I would never do that. And so I very much was like, okay, you've made me better. I trust you. Like, I'm just going to follow everything you say now. Which that's shaped a little bit because I definitely have a lot more saying things now.
I was going to say, that's such good advice for athletes, is the word that came was coachable. Because it's a common theme among so many sports that, especially because as sports people, often a big ego can come attached to it, right? Especially if you've done it for a little while. So if you bring your ego to it and your coach tells you straight up your running style's ugly, you're probably going to say, I don't like this guy. You know, he's not very nice. Anyway, I'm going. Whereas like, if you remove your ego from the situation and you have an open mind and you're willing to learn, it's obvious that it works over time.
Yeah, it's also quite scary because I think I wasn't, when I looked at that, I'm like, oh, this is scary. I don't think I'm good at this, and I'm not sure this is what I want to do. But I was always like, well, I'll give it a try. If it doesn't work, I can always go back to my awesome self-made training plan.
Absolutely.
So I was just very much like, I will try anything. And I'm that sort of person. I will experiment on myself, and I will try anything. If it helps, I'll keep it. If it doesn't, put it away. Like, there goes that idea. And it was just a case that once you pick up a coach that actually knows what they're doing, often it works well if you actually just follow the plan. But it was very much, I would question things for sure. And there was many times I know I'm definitely the sort of person that will challenge a coach in the way of, I want a why. Like, why am I doing it this way? And I will not take because I said so. I will take because this, and this. So it's very much, I always want that feedback on, okay, I'm happy to do anything. Just tell me why I'm doing it. And yeah, it wasn't too long after that where he was putting me in the cross country races. I was always up against other people. I was kind of got entrenched in the running community and running family, especially of Crosby Crew, a running group we have in Melbourne. And it just became that running was no longer just my thing, but it was like my way of socializing. And for me at that point in time, that was really important because that was my way of re-entering the community and life and other people and letting other people get to know me again, and dissociating myself in a way from my my place where I'd been for the last 4 or 5 years, where I think at that point in time my Instagram handle was That Mental Girl. And I was very entrenched in, I'm the sick one, I'm the one that's unwell, I'm the one that's forever in hospital, and I'm the one that like life doesn't work for, essentially. And it was like I could rock up to the Crosby crew and I could rock up to sessions with my coach and just be no one knew any of that. And it was the only area of my life at that point in time where no one did know, because at uni people knew because I was forever out of class or sick or all sorts of things, and like things get found out, and everyone obviously in my family and my friends knew. So it was all of a sudden I had this place to go multiple times a week. I think I was going like 4 times a week to this group, and no one knew anything outside of running. All they
so
talked
liberating.
to me about, exactly, all I was spoken to was about running. All I was asked questions about was about running, and there was none of the like people sidestepping around careful conversation and stepping on eggshells, and none of that was there. And all of a sudden I was just like, I can all of a sudden just create who I want to be, rather than step into a situation.
Build this identity.
Exactly, because there's so many spots where you'd step into a situation and people had already made up their mind about how you were going to be, and as humans we find ourselves then just stepping into that role. And there were so many circumstances where I'd be around other people that were unwell and find myself doing things like smoking, like stealing stuff from supermarkets, and just doing a whole bunch of stuff that wasn't me, but because I was around people that was sort of what was expected of them and then became expected of me. And like there was lots of stuff about this, where you learn about the people that you're surrounded by can then very much shape who you become. But
and
for
it's
me,
only
running
natural,
then was just it is,
because we crave this desire to want to have some kind of identity, and even if it's a negative
100%.
one, at least you still kind of know yourself, or you can predict your own actions. Versus if you didn't have that and you didn't have running, okay, what is Simone now? There's nothing to it. At least down that negative path, you kind of felt like you knew yourself. And you're touching on such a good point there, is that your social circle can enable you or prevent you from doing certain things depending on how big of a desire you have to fit in with them. So if your whole circle
100%.
is into running, wanting to do better for themselves, wanting to push themselves and constantly do better, then that's only in turn going to subconsciously brush off on you as well.
100%. And I found myself gaining confidence through that environment, and then I used that confidence to enter other environments where it wasn't all about running. And it's when I did my strength and conditioning course. It's when I went back to uni. And when you're back at uni doing a degree of biomedicine, you're all of a sudden surrounded by fellow nerds that love the human body. And so it was like I just slowly, very slowly, again, tiny baby steps over time, developed it wasn't just a running identity. It was like just reshaping my entire life. And this is not to say that I still for years was spending time, little bits of time, and every year less and less in hospital, having all like relapses of all kinds, thankfully not eating disorder related, but everything else mental health related for sure. And I still had a lot of struggles throughout this, but I always then knew that I had these places to go where I didn't have to worry about that. No one was going to ask me questions about it, and I could be myself. And I genuinely felt most myself often when I was running or I was studying or striving for things, and I wasn't left with too much energy and too much time to think. I just have too much energy. I need to run it out sometimes. Or to be fair, I just like movement. Hence why I went to the gym for a long time, and I did that for years. But yeah, it's definitely shaped that. And then just a further reshaping in a way was when I did my first trail race, because for me it was a case of, I love nature, adore being out in nature. Outdoors is everywhere I want to be is outdoors. And then I just loved the challenge of hills, I found. Like it was just where I found I could use, even in a short race.
This is so tough.
But I do find I don't know what it is about my physiology, but
Yeah.
I find myself really struggling for really small incremental improvements on flat road. It
Yeah.
just doesn't gel well with my body. I don't know what it is, but I try so hard and I just get little incremental improvements. But then I just found that the hills was where I could apply my mental drive, my mental
Mm,
stamina, and my ability to hurt to a
mm,
very short race still, and not just find myself left behind.
yeah.
Um, and I've also loved the fact that straight away I could see that there was a skill acquisition you had to do for trail running. It wasn't just learning to run, it was learning how to run on technical trails, the different forms for uphill and downhill, the problem solving of fueling. Like, there was just
Hmm.
so much else that came into it that I was in nature, still pushing myself, but having to think a lot more about it, having to learn a lot more, and just that challenge of the hills that I found other people dreading, and I would go, nah, chuck it at me, like, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just is sort of gelled with me straight away. And it's kind of like I haven't looked back since, because
Yeah.
the runner part of me still definitely wants to work on my flat PBs. That's for
Hmm.
sure. They're not too flashy compared to trail, but I kind of just let them go in a way, and don't get stuck into the ego of feeling like I need to prove I can run faster, because it sacrifices my time on trail. Like, the sacrifice would be time on trail, and I'm just
Yeah.
like, nah, that's where I'm
It's
happy, and I'm happy
counterintuitive.
doing my thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I'm more than happy doing my thing. I know where I'm good, I know what I'm good at, and I'm going to hone in on that and go all in on where I want to be good and where I feel I can be my best,
Yeah.
which very quickly became the trail.
Yeah, I'm real keen to pick your brain on some more of the specifics when it comes to the strategies and things
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
when it comes to running your trail races. And you're kind of touching on a theme that I was super interested in, and that's the key differences between your road racing and then your trail running. And you say that you've got this, better ability on the trail. What do you think it comes down to? Obviously, it's going to be a whole bunch of variables, but is one
Yeah.
thing, just from my limited knowledge, sort of energy systems? Obviously, I feel like trail running would require a lot more muscular strength in order to pull and push yourself up the hill, and obviously the
Yeah.
technical stuff, being able to jump over rocks and all of that. But I'm not the expert, so I'm keen to hear it from you.
Well,
What are the key
yeah,
differences?
it's definitely one of the, like, arguments that the people always have of what's the difference between trail and road, who's better, is a road runner gonna go just beat all the trail runners because trail is like for slow runners,
Yeah,
because they see our average paces and it's like, how do you run that slow? And I'm like, have you seen the hills?
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
but for sure, like, some of the major differences I find is that it's obviously massive strength component, um, but the biggest skill component is definitely the downhills,
Yeah,
because there's many a very fast, very strong road runner that will absolutely nail many of the uphill races, because even if uphill races are technical, you're moving slower, and it's very much a case of VO2 max, and like your aerobic output will
yeah.
play a lot into it. But as soon as you put it on a technical downhill, that's a skill, and that's a skill you need to learn, but also be willing to learn, because it takes
To me, it
risks.
seems like risk management. Exactly.
Yep,
Like
yep.
watching some of the stuff, man. Just one
It
wrong step and it's a broken
I
arm or anything.
love downhill, but
Yeah.
that's just because I've been told I lack the self-preservation gene. I just
Send it.
I'm just willing to exactly. I'm willing to have a crack, and I know you learn, like, it's again, running and life play hand in hand. You learn by falling, you learn by
Yeah.
failing, and I'm more than willing to fall to then learn how not to fall on the downhill. So, like, my very first trail race ever, I fell the whole way down that descent. It was a 10-kilometer descent. I fell at least 15 times. Like, I was falling more than once a kilometer, hitting the deck hard and trying to bounce and get back up. Like, I was just going, well, if I fall, I think you would have heard me say this in the Golden Trail video, like, if I fall, I'm falling towards the finish line.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, I
fine.
did actually.
Just bounce back up, keep going. It's still forward progress. It doesn't matter if it's on my face. All good. But it's also just, I love that the sessions just have these little intricacies of finding the technical stuff and finding a way to navigate it that you don't have to deal with on the road. So when you're training for road, you're training your aerobic systems, your anaerobic systems, and your leg strength to do the same thing over and over and over and over again at a certain speed. And
Yeah.
that's really hard. And that's all the training is aimed at that. It's repetitive motion, it's smooth, and I do love that aspect of it. The fact that you can switch your brain off, and the mission is just to find a pace and see how long you can sit there. It's really cool, and I do love that aspect of it. That's why I still happily jump in road races. I just never target my training towards it at the moment, because it is different training where you're trying to train to sit at the same effort level.
Yep.
So this is where one of the major differences in trail and road I find also is, unless it's a consistent uphill race, your racing in trail is much more like a fartlek. So it's much more like you're going hard for the 30-minute climb, and then you've got a 20-minute technical descent where your heart rate will massively drop because you're limited by the trail.
Interval
and then you might have a 3-minute climb and a 3-minute descent, and like over the course of a 35k race that takes, say, 3 hours, it's essentially a 3-hour fartlek that you're doing. It's not a marathon in that you're at the same pace and same effort and same heart rate the whole time. You've got to, your body has to learn to deal with heart rate spikes, heart rate drops, and still getting it back up. And it's just, there's a massive difference there. As long as it's and to be fair, even if it's a slightly hilly trail, there's definitely trail races, especially in Oz, that I would call glorified road races. Like, you chuck a road runner on some of them, and 100% they'll wipe the floor. Like, they'll just, if a really fast, really fit road runner jumps on some of the trails, I'm not going to argue that they're going to win. Like, it's a flat trail. It's easy to run. Anyone can do it. It just happens to be dirt instead of road. Not much difference to the road. It's when you, and what I love is when you get to the rocky, the technical, the steep, the up, down, up, down, up, down stuff, that you'll find you really do have to specialize and you have to work on. And I think that's what I committed to doing that very early, in going, I can see that there's the easy trail races that you can kind of train like a road runner, go do the trail and you'll do well. But what I really want to try and tackle is the stuff that you look at and you go, how do I run on this? So like, for context, one of my first overseas races was Dolomites Run.
It's like running on boulders, right?
Exactly. It's straight up and down Pisboe in the Dolomites in Italy. The uphill, again, nothing fancy about it. It's just going hard for 10Ks uphill. And you're on ski slopes. Like, it's steep, and there's definitely a skill acquisition and a fitness acquisition in being able to run uphill for that long. But it was where I got to Italy, and I remember standing at the top of the downhill, looking down at the trail, going, no way. This was like a week out from the race, just going, I can't do that. There's no way. I can't see the trail. I don't even know where I'm going to go. Not even a trail, exactly. Exactly. It was just rocks, and I looked at it, and you kind of go, I'm going to die. Like, I'm actually, like, I'm going to fall. I'm going to break something.
It's that simple.
But that's what I love about it, is that then the first time I went down that descent, I walked it. I couldn't run. I was like, I don't know how to do this. What do I do? Thankfully, the next time I got to the top of that ascent on my next training, like, check of the course, I happened to find another Solomon runner, Stian Angermund, who's one of the best downhillers, and he kind of went, sweet, just follow me downhill. And I got a masterclass in downhill by just trying and scaring the shit out of myself, because that's one of the things I've learned, that I kind of love that adrenaline feeling of, if you really commit to a downhill, you can't stop all of a sudden.
Your momentum's going down. Yeah.
You lean into it and you lean forward, which is the exact opposite of what your brain wants to do. Your brain's saying, lean back, take it slow, be careful. If you can override that and lean into it and just let it take you, it's amazing what your brain can perceive and do, and how quickly your legs can move and your feet can catch things if you let it. So one thing that the trails downhills taught me is just that your brain's a lot smarter, subconscious brain's a lot smarter than your conscious brain a lot of the time. So if you can switch the conscious brain off and let the subconscious do the work, your brain doesn't want you to fall, and it doesn't want you to die down the mountain. So it's going to work damn hard to keep you on your feet. But the more you think about it, the more you analyze, if I fall here, this happens. If I fall here, this happens. The slower you'll go, the worse it'll feel, the scarier you'll get. But I definitely, like, the caveat there is that I've taken some bad falls. They're not fun. But also, it's just that you have to be willing to scare yourself. Which some people love and some people hate. Because there's definitely times mid-race I'm racing down some of the downhill segments at Golden Trail were a great example of this. Like sprinting down some of this technical stuff and getting to the bottom and having to just stand there and stop and go, oh my God, I can't believe I just got to the bottom.
Let the adrenaline leave your body for a second. Yeah.
Like, I remember being mid downhill and consciously having to go, shut your brain off. This is too scary. Like, I can't deal with this. And it is scary, but I love that. Like, there's a sadistic part of me that loves that again. But again, that's the part of trail running that you're not going to get a single road runner that is only run on the road that can do that.
Yeah.
Unless for some reason, I don't know, they're a mountain biker or something.
Yeah. And I found another interesting thing about it, especially the downhills, is that, say, with that Dolomites race, there is no set trail per se. You might have some trail markers that you have to maybe reach, but you almost just pick a line and stick to it. It's not like a nice gravel path that you have to
find
follow.
your own adventure. Dolomites is a great example of that, actually, because there is a trail. There actually is a switchbacky trail on Dolomites, but you're not going to win the race if you do that.
Sounds a bit slow.
you don't have to take the trail. That's what I love about some of the races. There's plenty of races where you're going to get disqualified if you don't take the defined trail. Dolomites is not one of them. And so there's a single line down this other side where it's not a trail, but you can see that you can run it and it goes straight down and avoids all the switchbacks. And that's where you have to go if you want to overtake people there. And it's scary. But there's other races like that too, where Norway, great example. Oh my goodness, it is technical in Norway. And their idea of a trail is just little flags put between rocks all the way up, all the way down. There's not a single trail there. You're just looking at it going, okay, what do we do here? And I loved that challenge too, because again, my heart rate's getting real high because I'm scared. I was singing to myself on that downhill, just going la-di-da-di-da, trying to calm myself down. Because the calmer you are and the quicker you move your feet, it's kind of like if your feet are moving quick enough, even if one slips on a slippery rock, you catch yourself with the other one and it's okay. But yeah, it's just, I think one thing I bring to it is that childlike, just treat it like you're a little kid that doesn't have a care in the world and is having fun while it's scary. Because I think we all have an experience from looking back on it as a kid where we did that, and you look at it now and you're like, oh my goodness, as an adult, I would not
Your
do
logical
that at all.
mind wants to override it.
Yeah, exactly, because we know too much. Sometimes we know too much for our own good. But if you can get back into that, I'm just going to have fun with it. I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to tackle it in the best way I know how, but I'm going to have fun with it. Then you end up more relaxed, going faster. Like, I love that aspect of it. But again, this is just tying into my liking how you can manipulate the mind to do better, which definitely does come into play a little bit on roads, because it's about what they say about going to sleep and letting the body do the work. Because if you've done the training, the body can do the work if you just don't freak out. But there's just so much more of that on the trail, and goodness knows, once you get to ultras, there's just the fueling strategies. There's just so much that comes into it. And so I find there's a few different types. But when you come to the trail, you can do a lot of trail races and not have to do too much skill acquisition and not have to do too much crossover when it comes to road. And the training itself is somewhat similar. No matter what trail races you're doing, you're always going to get better if you're going faster. Like, that's just running. But at the same time, the skill acquisition has to be there if you really want to do well on the trails and be good on the technical stuff. And not left behind on the big mountains, technical stuff, all the big races in Europe. It's not the biggest sport in Oz. I'm hoping it grows over the years. But I loved getting over to Europe and seeing people get really excited about competition on the trails.
One thing it really reminds me of, so I did a bit of mountain biking growing up, going through school, and my sister, she did road biking. And I remember us always arguing. So I would do a 25k mountain bike race and be smashed, and she would do a 180k road race. And we're just having an argument like, no, the 25k's in the mountains is way harder than 180k's on the road. So I could see this sort of like competition element. You can't really compare it.
They're just hard in different ways. Exactly. And I used to get all annoyed. And to be fair, there is definitely times I still do, because the amount of times you have to field a road runner that doesn't actually, like, and 100% if I, looking back on when I was pure road runner, didn't understand trail, probably I would have had the same outlook. And I definitely did a couple of times where I was like egotistically going into a trail race going, oh, it's going to be easy. I'll look at the average pace and it's like, I can run that fast.
The ego thing. Yeah, 100%.
But there's definitely an ego thing. And so there's definitely times where I'm like, people have looked at my road PBs and gone, oh, that's easy. Like I should be able to beat you up this climb or down this descent. And I'm just like, try me. Yeah. Absolutely. Like that is when my competitor will 100% come out. Because if I had $1 for every time I've heard someone in the running community in Oz go, the trail is where the slow runners go, I just, it does my head in at times. But at the same time, I understand why people have that outlook. Because if you don't understand the ins and outs of the technical trails, and it depends obviously which trail race you're looking at. But I think that's definitely one thing that I'm hopefully slowly changing as tech trail gets more competitive. Because I find that there's plenty of places, especially in Oz, and I adore the trail running community. I love that it's as inclusive as they come. Anyone can come, enjoy the trails, and it's very much a community vibe. That's why I'm more drawn to the trails than the road, to be fair.
That was something that I heard come up through the Golden Trail series, and I was wondering, because you know how people would say that if they're getting a documentary done on their sport. So that's something I was wondering if that was the case from your experience in that community.
100%. It's an eclectic bunch of people, trail runners, because if you think about it, it's like your mix of people that love the outdoors, love trail, love mountains and a whole bunch of different things, and people get a lot. For the most part, I find people are a lot less caught up on the numbers and you're not tied to a stopwatch for your pace for everything, and so it speaks to a different type of person often. And so it's a different community, it's a different vibes, and it's where I feel a lot more comfortable. But at the same time, I am one of those people that adores a competition, will happily turn anything into a competition if I want to. I'm getting better at switching that off in times, because I'm just like, it doesn't matter in this spot. I'll save that mentality for when it counts.
Leave the ego to the side.
Exactly. I love that whole striving for your best sort of thing. And I think that's where I would love to see just more growth in the sport, obviously, because there's nothing that excites me more than standing on a start line and going, we're about to go into 3 hours of war. This is awesome. On the trails, running fast. Like, I'm not the sort of person that likes an easy win. I find races, when I'll happily rock up to the smaller races, run them along, but I don't even like the feeling of crossing a line way out in front, knowing I haven't really had to work that hard.
Doesn't give you that dopamine hit.
It's not. And I love, and people are awesome, and people are always like, "Oh my gosh, that was amazing," and I just kind of want to stand there going, "It actually wasn't," but I don't want to I don't want to
trying to
push
congratulate you.
Exactly. I don't want to push away congratulations, because it's very I'm very thankful for it, but at the same time, there's many races that I could rock up to and not push very hard, and you're at the front no matter what you do. And so that side of things, I think just if I'm there just for a jog, 100% adore that. If I'm wanting to push myself and there's no one else around you that you can race, that's not what I find fun. I would rather come 10th, 20th, 30th like I do in Golden Trail. I'm trying to just break into the top 20 at Golden Trail amongst who I know are the best in the world, rather than win by 10 minutes, 20 minutes. That's not what I'm in the sport for.
And I was about to say, it shows the reason that you're in it. It's not just for the trophies or the medals. It's
100% not. I'd rather never win a race again. 100%.
Yeah.
I'd definitely rather never win a race again, but have amazing performances I am proud of, coming 10th, 15th, 5th, 3rd. Doesn't bother me. If I've got to the finish line and gone, that was everything I had, and the field and the race has gotten everything out of me today, that's all I want. And so, the more I can get that, and the more I can get it in Oz at home and not have to travel to Europe all the time.
All the way to Europe.
Then the happier I'll be, for sure. So it's growing, and over the years I have faith that it'll happen, because it's such a new sport that's on the rise, and that's exciting. But that's currently essentially why I spend so long racing overseas, is I'm just always going to be searching for the best competition to go, where do I stand against the best, not where do I stand against people that aren't dedicating anywhere near as many hours to running as me. Like some races you rock up to and you're like, of course I should win this. I'm training double what everyone else is. Like I'd be worried. Exactly. I'd be worried if I didn't. But when you find yourself around your tribe and you get to be among people that you know are dedicated as much as you do, and 100% time, sometimes that is incredibly humbling.
Yeah.
But I like that humbling. Like that's what makes you work harder. That's what where the drive comes from to go, nah, I want to be able to do better. So what do I need to change to do better?
And it's that mentality that's going to keep you improving as well, not just sort of
100%.
sit back and...
I look at running for me as more of like a 10-year build of like my peak is 5, 6, 10 years away. It's not now. Like any race result I get now, awesome. If it's a step in the right direction, awesome. If it's a step in the wrong direction, not the end of the world. Because what I'm looking for is how well can I be running in 3, 4, 5, 10 years, not can I come into the sport, make a massive splash, do amazing things at the sacrifice of my long-term health, my longevity in the sport. Like 100%, there's always more you can do in training in the immediate term. But it's a matter of, will that actually help you long-term, or is that just going to get you immediate results and long-term dissatisfaction because you're injuring yourself or you're burning out? So yeah, I'd rather have that really incremental, slow rise over many, many years, and maybe not look flash hot in the beginning, and that's fine by me, because it's like in 2028, like let's see what I can do then, not let's see how amazing I can be in 2020.
And it's obvious that you obviously practice what you preach to, the ladder analogy, putting small bricks in place, and everyone's at a different place with their sport or with their career, whatever it may be. So that means different things to different people. But even someone like you who's competing against the best, there's still small improvements that you can make. You can still take that long-term gratification approach instead of that short-term gratification approach.
It's scary at times, especially whenever you get injured, because you're like, running is that thing where you're just like, there is things that can go wrong that can take this all away. And that I find you can look in that two ways. It can be incredibly scary and it can make you freeze and try and hold on really tightly and then do too much. Or I try and flip that, because there's times I get caught in that, there's no doubt. But you try and flip it and go, you just make the most of what the time you've got, because you never know when it's going to end. And it means that you do value it more in the moment, because it's like any day you can run is a good bloody day, or any day you can do what you want to do in life is a good day, because you never know when that's going to be taken away.
It's not until you have like a sore ankle or something that you start to contemplate those things. It's so easy to take it for granted.
But that's where you can get caught up in the, like, I have so many big dreams of so many races I want to run that are the 100K to the 100-mile distance. Like, so many things in the sport excite me, like the backyard ultras. I just want to get my teeth into everything. But I also know that I'm going to be better off doing that in the long term, even if that 100% it could get to the point where I have something really bad goes wrong and I can't run. I never get to do those things. But I would rather have tried to do it in a healthy way than grab onto it all now. And at the end of the day, you see it all the time where people do that. They do so much to begin with because they're so excited about the sport and what they can do, that then within a couple of years, they're kind of almost out of the sport or too injured to do it anyway. So, it's scary, but it's good.
Yeah. I was going to say, I feel like it's such a catch-22 being such a high-caliber athlete, because a lot of your identity needs to be put into this. Otherwise, you're not going to put in all the effort and the time and stuff that's required. But with so much of your identity and time wrapped up in it, if it was to be taken away, it seems like it's a bit fragile in the sense of that you would have this big hole in your life then. So
and I think that's where I've evolved a lot, because I 100% at the beginning, especially before I had a coach, I had a need to run. I had a definite need, and if I didn't have running, I struggled. To be fair though, for me, I'm very lucky in that I actually do love cross training. I'll jump on a bike, I'll jump in the pool, I'll jump on a rower, like anything that gets me moving and my heart rate up, for me actually does a lot of good. So I'm not necessarily tied to running. I just love running, so I want it to be running. But over the years, it's definitely a case of, as I've evolved in running and in life and done a lot more work on myself, and I've always been committed to doing as much work on my mental health, no matter where I'm at in life, as my physical health, that it's kind of like running is awesome. And as long as running is around, I'm going to do everything I can to get everything out of myself. But I'm so self-assured in the fact that if I couldn't run another day, I actually would be fine. I do have other things in life. I have amazing friends. I have an amazing community. And I also just trust the fact that I'll always be involved in running, even if I'm not the person running, because I love coaching. I would happily get on, like even tomorrow morning, I'll get out on the bike while all my training partners are out running. And I'll just be around people that are still, runners are awesome people.
It's like vicariously taking part.
Exactly. So I just have this amount of trust in myself to know that no matter what happens in life, I'll be fine. I've been through enough shit to know that I can get through tough stuff and I can survive, and it doesn't have to be running that keeps me going. I love studying, I love research, I love the human body, and that's where I feel very lucky that I've been on that journey and I've had the support, and I still commit to having as many psych sessions as running sessions sometimes it feels like, but it's just that internal journey of going, it would be scary because I see where the trap people get stuck into, where it feels like every result is a make or break. Every result is, do I make the money? Don't I make the money? Every result can be, am I sponsored next year? Am I not sponsored next year? Am I supported? Am I going to be okay? Like and to be fair, there's definitely moments where you question things. Like I've come home from many an overseas trip absolutely broke and unable to do anything to support myself, going, oh my goodness, is this the right move in life? But it's kind of just chuck the trust out and go, trust out to the world and go, okay, I trust that I'm going to be okay no matter what happens. I'm just very committed to this at the moment. But at the end of the day, and I'm very thankful to have the support I do, because with Solomon Oz, with all my sponsors, I've had so many good chats with them in the way that there's no pressure to perform on any one day. Life is too unpredictable to even expect that. I just don't see how anyone would ever expect someone that you have to be perfect on this day.
There's so many variables.
You can try. Exactly. Try your best. But at the same time, like, it's just not, that's not life. Life isn't like that. No one gets to pick timing of things all the time. And so I feel incredibly supported by my coach, by Solomon, by all my other sponsors, Tailwind, everyone. I don't feel any pressure to perform, but I have created that for myself. And it's almost like the less pressure that's put on me, the more I then want to give back to them through doing well. It's almost like I just have this massive drive to go, I want to say thank you for everything you were doing for me. And I'm going to say thank you by performing my absolute best.
And it's obvious they trust in you and give you the autonomy to do that. And that's the space where you're able to thrive instead of almost being micromanaged or something.
It's definitely a case that, like, I'm very careful about who I associate with, who I have around me. Like, I've learned the value of that, and I'm very good at setting expectations with people around me, having those deep conversations that mean a lot. And it's definitely a case that I do not do well. If someone tells me I have to do something, even if I previously wanted to do it, I will all of a sudden go, nah, I'm not doing that now.
Just on principle.
Purely because you told me I have to, I'm not going to do it. I know I said last week I wanted to, but now you're telling me I have to, so no. So it's just a case that if people go, we'll support you in what you want to do, I'll go, often you find just such this happy place where you're going, well, at the end of the day, we all pretty much want the same thing anyway. And it's also just that the, like, wanting to give back to the people that support is an awesome place to be. And that only comes from having the right kind of support from people around you. And that comes from being very careful about who you knock back and who you don't choose to associate with, who you choose to take sponsorship from. Like, there's a lot that goes into it for sure. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the communication aspect. And that's how I think coming back to the question of, like, identity and not having your entire identity tied up in it. That's where we have the conversations around what other things I want to do and what other things I'm passionate about. And my sponsors also support the other things I'm doing. They support my studies. They support me around the fundraising projects I want to do. And it feels like I'm supported for more than just me, the runner against the stopwatch, and the runner against the other runners. I'm supported
not just
for
a
me,
commodity.
the human, human on a journey, sharing that journey and trying to show to people what an entire journey looks like, not just the highlights.
I really like how that takes a holistic perspective into it. It's not just this one-dimensional view where you're the runner, you have to do well in order to build our brand or in order to get money in the door or anything like that. It's this holistic perspective where they're investing in you as a person, and you just
100%.
also happen to be running on these trails too.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it makes me want to do better on the trails. Like, it's an awesome situation to be in because it makes me want to perform. And like, there's that can, I feel like that in some scenarios for professional runners, that gets lost. Because if you feel too much pressure and if you feel too much like you have to perform, it's almost like it just becomes a fear-based drive rather than a very intrinsically motivated based drive. Very different place to be mentally.
Absolutely. Now, one aspect I'm super interested to dive a bit more deeply into is the sort of nutrition, perhaps even supplementation around, maybe let's keep it more specific to your racing in general, but what are some of the key learnings that you've gained over time in terms of adequately fueling yourself and hydrating yourself on your races? I'm sure there's been mistakes and stuff along the way. I have learned
lots of mistakes, but it always takes more food than you think to train and perform. Like, a lot of my money goes on food. And I eat a lot more now than I ever would have thought anyone would need. Like, it forever blows my mind, the fact that, but I look at that as a superpower in the way that the more fuel you can give your body, the more you can do, the more you can recover, the more training you can do, the better you get. So I spend a lot of time training my gut to take on just a stupid amount of food. Like, it's crazy sometimes, the bowls of food I sit in front of.
Are you on a specific plan, or what does it look like? Yeah.
At times, if I'm in a massive training block and I don't have my mental capacity goes down a lot in some of my massive training weeks. When you're running 200 Ks a week and then doing a lot of other training around it, it's just things go out the window, and I need a plan to follow. And then I have a very good dietitian, Jess Rothwell, that will write things up for me, and I'll just follow it. It's kind of like, it just takes any thinking out of the equation. It's like, that's what it says to eat. I'm going to eat that. If I'm hungry, I'll eat more. I'll never eat less. If I'm hungry, I'll eat more. That's always the golden rule. It's like, you just have to go above, not below. And so, there's massive meals, which to begin with, I was just like, you're taking the piss, Jess. Like, what is this? But that's the biggest thing I've learned, is just that more food is good food. But then around races, there's a lot of intricacies in the way of what food you eat can upset your gut or not upset your gut. So I go very low FODMAP. I am vegan. However, I will say this is that I'm vegan when I'm at home, and I entirely plant-based when I'm at home and when I have control of my environment. There's many a time I'm overseas and it's in my best interest and health to eat what's put in front of me without being detrimental to my own intake and health and everything. So if someone else is cooking for me, it's like, if someone else is cooking for me and I don't have control over the food that I have to eat, I'm not just going to sit there and put myself at risk of low energy or anything just because there's fish in the meal or there's eggs in the meal or something like that. I'll try as best I can, but like, there'll probably be the hardcore vegans that would absolutely hate me, because I will happily eat food that's put in front of me if I know that's what's best for my body. That's just, I'm not willing to risk that. So that's just kind of my take on traveling, especially because there's many a times the race is organizing the food. Like, I will ask them, and if it's but
just
also
get what you're given.
Get what you're given, and often I'm given vegan stuff, but if it's the night before a race, I don't really want a chickpea curry. Like, it's not really going to go down too well, and it could destroy my race the next day. Like, it's just not always ideal. So anyways, I'm flexible on that front, but around races, it's very much plain food, plain rice, plain bread. I'm celiac as well. That's honestly the hardest part, is being celiac. But plain, rice, bread. During races, I have purely tailwind. I don't take in anything else, so that's just liquid carbs. I've learned the hard way many a time that just gels, nothing else works for me. As I get into the much, much longer stuff, I might start intaking some solid foods and some real foods, because during training I'll have banana breads and lollies and that sort of stuff during a long run as well. But it's just those three key pillars of pre-race, low fiber, simple foods, lots of food so that you're topping up your carb stores. During race, for me, it's incredibly simple. Liquid carbs, tailwind. I'll have some Revies for my caffeine. I'll have some cramp fix if I've got cramps. That doesn't often happen. So for me, that's just so simple. And then post race, it's just make sure you get your protein, your carbs, and a bunch of energy in straight away. And it's almost like sometimes people need to think about it a lot less. I think it's really not hard.
I was about to say that sounds so straightforward.
It is. To be fair, I'm more than happy eating simple food. So I'm, as much as my body's decided to be celiac, so I have to be gluten free, and I will eat vegan. If anything that is gluten free and vegan, I will put in my body. I will eat it. It does, like, now it doesn't matter to me because I know the value of just getting nutrition in, and it doesn't so much matter what that nutrition is, other than immediately around a race. But it's just simple foods, and I try and get everything in from my foods. Where I do run into trouble more because of the celiac is just my iron, because I've never been able to hold my iron stores very high, so I have to supplement the iron. And times like this, or when I'm injured or something, or if I feel like I'm getting sick, there'll be a few things I take, like the zinc and C, calcium and vitamin D, like that. If I supplement anything, it'll be those things. But even on a vegan gluten-free diet, I can get all that in through food, except the iron, because my body just doesn't like to hold it. But everything I can get in, and it's, by and large, such a lazy cook. I'm such a lazy eater, because if I will happily just chuck a bunch of raw stuff on a plate with a loaf of bread and eat. Like, doesn't bother me.
Certainly works well in your favor.
Yep. Like, I'm a foodie at times in the fact that I like food. But I'm not the sort of person that will spend ages in a kitchen cooking up a storm. I will spend 10 minutes in the kitchen cooking a massive stir fry, chuck some rice with it, and you're good to go. If dinner takes more than 10 minutes to cook, it's too long.
Too much admin.
So definitely too much admin. But yeah, just for me, it's about the intake, making sure the intake's right, and not worrying about it.
What about any sort of what about any kind of supplementation in terms of maybe sort of sodium, magnesium, the cramp prevention kind of stuff? Do you take like salt pills or anything like that in your races?
During races, no, because I get all that through my tailwind. So that's all the electrolytes and stuff are in the tailwind. It's all in a nice ratio for what I've felt so far. So I'll run into trouble in some races where you just don't get to decide the timing of your stomach being off times. And then I will struggle to get food in. I'll struggle to get electrolytes in. Old Ghost was honestly shocking on the nutrition front. Like, that wasn't good. Some races are good, some are bad. But yeah, during races, honestly, tailwinds just makes it easy for me because it's all I have. And it's all I need.
That's a liquid stuff, not a gel stuff, is it? Like it goes in
So it's a powder that you just put in water.
Yeah.
So you've got your 500ml flask, 2 scoops in your 500ml flask, and off you go. Sometimes I'll have more if I'm not drinking as much. Sometimes I'll have less if I'm drinking more. But it keeps it simple. And then around normal training, I will sometimes have like magnesium at night after massive training days or massive weeks, because there's many a times I have some pretty massive back-to-back days, and there's definitely times I'll put it in, but I'm definitely not too fussed about most supplements, and obviously having to be careful around the supplements that I do take, making sure they're batch tested and all that. For anti-doping, so it makes life a lot easier because you've got a much shorter list of ones you can buy and things you can have. So but by and large everything I get is I eat a lot of fruit and veg anyway, and I know I have studied nutrition, and obviously having been through the rigmarole of eating disorder recovery, then you learn a lot along that process too. So sometimes you can know too much, that's for sure. But I've gotten a lot more relaxed about it in recent times, and that has massively worked in my favour. So
I personally find it quite interesting. I guess maybe I had an assumption that there was all this like science and complexity and stuff to it, and there was specific
eat good food, eat lots of it,
timings and minerals and stuff. But it's almost quite nice in a way to hear that, because at least from my experience in the fitness space, all too often I think people are really quick to say, okay, I'm starting at the gym, that means I need to buy supplements straight away. You know, it's like it's the pyramid is flipped where they are, the name of them is supplements. So they supplement your diet.
Your
The
diet,
main thing is that foundation. So it's so interesting to hear that someone who competes at such a high level like you, supplementation, you're not taking 20 different supplements a day. You're just taking them as and when you need them, which seems like quite a healthy approach to it.
If you're taking a supplement and you haven't got a proven need for it, it's just expensive. Like, you're just spending a lot of unnecessary money that you could spend on better food.
And a lot of it goes down the toilet too when you...
A lot of it goes down, exactly. And it's just, I'd rather spend money on really good food. Yeah. So, like, I do spend a lot of money on food. It's one of the main area in life I don't skimp on. But I'd rather spend it on food than supplements, that's for sure. There's definitely some key ones, and there's times they can save you. When I'm traveling, I'll always take my zinc and stuff like that to stop myself getting sick. Like, there's 100% a lot of proven supplements. One great thing to follow is just if you follow, like, in Australia, we've got like the Australian Institute of Sport. They have an awesome supplement list that goes, these ones are proven in science to actually do stuff for you, and these ones you're not worth the money. So supplement companies might hate it, but at the same time, it's a really good resource because you can look at it and go, okay, trust that one, don't trust those ones.
Yeah, like, science-based.
Exactly. It's like, I'm a scientist at heart. If there's not science behind it, like, even I'm very scientific about my running. Like, it's an experiment, really. So if there's not science behind it, I'm just like, if there's enough of a anecdotal evidence, I'll again try it if it's obviously legal and allowed. But if there's no evidence, it's like, well, what's the point?
Yeah,
like,
just giving into consumerism.
Exactly. Like, there's a lot of clickbait out there.
Yeah,
and don't fall for that.
Nah. Now, before we wrap it up, I've found this super insightful, by the way. But before we do wrap it up, what's next on the cards for you? So what's coming up for you this year? Have you got any big races or anything scheduled in?
A little bit of an experiment at the moment in trying to get myself back for... I'm confident. World champs are only 11 weeks away, 10 weeks away. So World Mountain and Trail Running Championships. Now, I still do need to be named on the team. I have nominated... I was meant to run the qualifying race this Saturday, but... that's not happening because I've done my back in traveling around New Zealand. I thought that I had, I do have some very much.
I saw you living out of a camper van. That's not very conducive to having good spine health.
It's so annoying because it's it's the first time in a few years I've gone traveling for traveling's sake post-race. Like, I've just enjoyed holiday vibes with a friend. And it was like, everyone's like, camper van's the perfect way to travel around New Zealand. And 100% it is. But it's not when you're trying to recover from an 85k race. Yes. And I'm prone to back problems when I'm not sleeping on good surfaces. So I do, because I've done all the facet joints essentially in my lower back, and it's been causing nerve pain. And then because of that, I got a little bit, thankfully only a tiny bit of bone stress through my sacrum and hip. That bone stress will be fine soon because it was so minimal. But the back is what my main issue is, which I'll be back running very soon. I've had 2 weeks off so far. I'll take another 2 weeks off just to make sure everything settles. But then I have a solid 8-week build to World Champs. Yeah. But thankfully I'm coming off a massive base of training and fitness, and I do still feel very fit. So first up on the cards next is World Champs, provided I'm named in the team. And I've gone for the 45k race there, which is the short trail.
And that's the short one.
That's the short one.
Whereabouts is that? Is that Oz or is that Europe?
That's in Austria.
Austria. Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's the World Champs in Austria. They've got all the other disciplines, but I want to do the 45k, and then back to Golden Trail. Sick. The first race of Golden Trail that I'll do is Marathon de Mont Blanc, which is 2.5 weeks after World Champs. Yeah. And then this year being my last year of uni, I do have to navigate things a little differently in that I'll come straight back to Oz from Europe to do a stint of uni study while training, obviously. For the next races in Golden Trail that I'll do are the ones in the USA. So Pikes Peak Ascent and Mammoth Lakes. And obviously the main goal will be, again, that top 30 spot in the final that I got so close to last year and kind of got ripped out from underneath me for many reasons. But that final of Golden Trail is then in October in Italy. And to be fair, like, obviously I'll do everything I can to put in 3 good performances in Golden Trail, but it's going to take 3 good performances to make that top 30, and I love that fact. So obviously things might not all go to plan. I'll probably, again, same as last year, still go to the final in Italy regardless of my position, purely because I'm in this to race the best in the world. I want to be there to race and experience it and get better. So a goal, definitely get in that top 30, qualify for the final in the top 30 elites and go from there. But I'll be at Marathon de Mont Blanc, Pikes Peak, Mammoth Lakes, and the final regardless.
Man, that's so exciting. I'm personally going to be following along quite closely on your journey.
You.
I'm very intrigued to see how it all goes. And if people also want to follow along on your journey, where's the best place for them to find you? Would you say it would be your Instagram or?
Definitely. I'm not great on the Facebook and I don't have a Twitter. So Instagram is pretty much the only thing I have time for. At the Flying Brick _ on Instagram is the best place definitely to follow the journey. I do have a website with a blog that I have every intention of trying to update more often that I don't
It's
update
the intent that counts.
There is an
though,
old
right?
ghost. Exactly. There is an old ghost ultra race report up there for the first race report in about a year. So every now and again, and to be fair, the one thing I do send people to the website for is that there's a massive backlog of blogs about more of my history, because the one thing I'm finding very funny in a way after being on the Golden Trail TV episode is that people kind of think that's the whole story. I'm like, you can't put a whole life story in 20 minutes.
No, I bet there's a lot more to it.
there's a lot more to it than what's portrayed there. They've done an amazing job with it. I'm so happy, and I was very thankful that I could trust them with my story, part of my story. But it's one page in a book. Like I feel like people miss that point sometimes when watching TV series. It's like you've got a little tip of my story. You don't know everything. So it's there's a little bit more first-hand blogging stuff on the website too if people are interested, and I've tried to make them as informative as possible for to help people that are in their own journey. So hopefully they do help a few people. You never quite know. I'm hoping. I'm hoping I'm putting it out there and it's helping. That's always it's hard to do but good to do. I find for both fronts. But definitely those are the main ones.
Sweet. Thank you. And thanks heaps again for coming on. I personally got a lot out of it, and so I'm sure other people will, especially people who don't run. So and again, all the best for this year too. I'm really keen to see how it all goes.
Yeah, see how we go. I'll have a big crack no matter what. We'll see how we go.